Greetings, church. Welcome to another devotional. We're just glad that you have joined us. Lately, we've been studying the book of Esther on Sunday mornings. I've really been enjoying and have a new appreciation for the book of Esther, and I hope that you've been enjoying those Bible studies as well. I'd like for you, if you just turn your Bibles to Esther chapter 9. I just want to read one verse from there. Esther chapter 9 and verse 2. Then the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for fear of them fell upon all people. Now, so far in our studies, we've been looking at certain individuals in the book of Esther that play a major role. King Ahasuerus was wealthy, powerful, very impulsive, made a lot of bad decisions. We've looked at Haman. He was a wicked person that sought harm for the Jews and was always interested in promoting himself. We've looked at Mordecai. He's very loving, very humble, very protective of Esther and the Jewish people. We've looked at Esther, very courageous, shows a lot of character. You remember she stood before the king. And this Sunday, we're going to just redirect a little bit and refocus and not look at individuals so much, but look at the Jewish people. And what we find here in the book of Esther is a lot of different contrasts from the beginning of Esther and the end of Esther. At the beginning of Esther, the Jewish people were doomed. They were a marked people. In the end of Esther, they were a delivered people. God miraculously delivered them. In the beginning of Esther, they were a divided people all over the 127 provinces of the Persian kingdom. In the end of Esther, they're a unified people. We also see that in the beginning of Esther, they were a people of fear. They were hiding for their lives in fear of Haman and his wicked plot. And in the end of Esther, they were people whom others feared. We see in Esther that in the beginning of Esther, they were a mourning people. Very negative. Haman's plot and plan went into action, started going into action, and they were mourning over that. In the end of Esther, they were a rejoicing people. They were a hated people at the beginning of Esther. At the end of Esther, they were a desired people. So much so that actually in the book of Esther, in the end, there were some Persians that wanted to become Jews. Now, how did God bring about such changes? What did he use to bring about such changes? Well, I think there's a couple of things that are very clear. First of all, God used people to bring about these changes. And it's important for us to understand that whenever God does something, usually he uses people. There are very few rare exceptions to that. Creation would be one. Obviously, he didn't use any of us to create this earth. But usually when God does something, he uses people. Also, he uses prayer. I think the turning point in the book of Esther is Esther's prayer. Do you remember in Esther chapter 4, she called for fasting. Her and her maidens fasted, asked for Mordecai to fast, asked for Mordecai to get the Jewish people to fast. And that was the turning point in the book of Esther. Then we see also how God used circumstances, very unusual circumstances that we see in the book of Esther. And God uses circumstances in our lives to open doors, to close doors. So I would encourage you to pay attention to circumstances. And God also uses time. Now, the events of Esther took place over about a 10-year period. But the changes that I mentioned here were very drastic changes that took place over a short period of time. Now, the book of Esther is covered in God's sovereignty. We see God's sovereignty all throughout the book. And we are subjects of God's sovereignty. And God uses these same things in our lives as he did in the book of Esther. He uses people, he uses prayer, he uses circumstances, and he also uses time, as long as our lives are on his timeline and we go according to his timetable. So I want to encourage you to be with us this Sunday as we close out the book of Esther. It's been a wonderful study. I hope that you've gained some practical things from it and are applying it to your life. God bless you and have a wonderful day.